Welcome to the Private Practice Startup Podcast, where we help ambitious private practitioners across the globe to brand themselves and grow their dream practices. We chat with successful private practitioners, business coaches, and marketing experts, bringing you tons of practice building ninja tips. Visit privatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and our signature marketing e-course. Here are your co-hosts, Dr. Kate Campbell and Katie Lemieux.
Hey there, Startup Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the Private Practice Startup Podcast. And we are excited that you are here. Before we dive into today's guest, today's topic, I hope that you guys joined us last week as we interviewed Jessica Tapana of Simplified SEO. And we chose a topic that you guys wanted to hear. We love when you vote because we really want to provide content that is helpful for you. And so we talked about website pages that are good for SEO when it comes to therapists. So we talked about the different pages there. And Jessica talks fast. She gave us a lot of information and knowledge. I learned a few ninja tips. So you're definitely going to want to listen to that episode. And if you're brand new to us, welcome to the Startup Nation family. We're sending our open arms and giving you a virtual hug. We have our gift for you, whether you're new or you're a loyal listener. Kate, after decades of helping therapists and ourselves create full fee, thriving practices and helping many therapists do the same, is we've compiled all the information into one awesome, cool playbook called Your Dream Private Practice, and we would like to gift that to you. So head on over to privatepracticestartup.com and slide on over to the resources tab. So today's guest and today's topic is a very important topic in our commitment to continue to bring light to this area. So today we are interviewing Dr. Dani Moy, PhD, LMFT of Harmony Cove Therapy, and we're going to be talking about 3 best practices that target racial trauma in therapy. And just a little bit about Dr. Dani. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, speaker, cultural empowerment coach, and social justice advocate. She's been featured in the Oprah Magazine, NBC, The Today Show, and Bustle. Dr. Dani passionately uses her platform to foster safe spaces of racial trauma healing for the community and therapists of color. In her leisure time, she enjoys connecting with others and discovering new places. Welcome, Dani.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is great to have you here.
It's great to be here on this sunny day, finally.
And sunny day in Connecticut. So before we hit record, we're chatting a little bit about that. I'm originally from Connecticut, so I totally know how you feel about that. And you've also lived in Florida for some time as well. So I know that sunny days are really important when you're not in a sunny state.
Yes.
Yeah. So fantastic. Where should we start along this journey for you? How did you become so passionate about this personally, but also professionally, and want to kind of utilize this as your platform to talk about this stuff?
Yeah. So I think for me, just kind of growing up and navigating very diverse spaces. And as I got older, I became more curious about just what was going on. A lot of things I feel like I was protected from, whether that's by my family, my community, my church community, the schools that I was a part of. And so as I got older, I was like, I'm a little curious about, so wait a minute, we are this many years ahead and this is still going on. And so I just started to delve deeper into it, become curious about, why my community was responding the way it was to certain economic crises and race-based injuries to others. And then I was like, I think that when those of us who are a part of a culture are given the opportunity and the privilege to have a platform, we should utilize that in the best way possible to give voice and meaning to those experiences and sort of widen those narrow narratives that have been put out prior to our existence. So I was like, I'm definitely going to give voice to this.
Nice. And when you got into the mental health field, did you kind of know that this was your direction initially, or did this kind of evolve?
It evolved. It's crazy because I really wanted to be a therapist, to be a sex therapist. Initially, I think that's what motivated me. In undergrad, I studied gender studies. And growing up in a Christian home, it was just like a kid in a candy store. I was like, gender studies? Oh, wow. I started learning all this new stuff and taking in all this new information. And that's what I really wanted to do. But then once I started working in the field, doing in-home therapy, actually having that connection and just that human connectedness on a day-to-day basis, going to people's homes and interacting with them, I started to become more curious about their lived experiences, their various cultures. And I just started to naturally go in a different direction. Not saying I won't come back to that at some point, but I became more curious about like racial trauma and the impact it has on our community today.
Gotcha. And I'm just curious, what was your dissertation about?
It was actually, it was on vicarious racial trauma through Facebook. And what I did was I focused on the Black woman's experience and how that sometimes heightens our level of anxiety, whether we are mothers, sisters, daughters, or just even in our community, serving our community, how it heightens our anxiety to have to constantly be reminded of the disregard towards others who look like us. And what I did was I tracked my response to various racially traumatic events over the past years that I was in the doctoral program, from Tamir Rice to Sandra Bland to Trayvon Martin, like just different things. And also took record of how others were responding. And I noticed that there was just a lot of people posting like every second, expressing themselves and using online community as a way of like healing, but also a way to vent and put their raw emotions out there. I think that's like the best way to capture it.
So it's always interesting. I find like, you know, when we're in something and experiencing it and then we take a different lens, right? So you did your dissertation and you're looking at this from maybe like a research base and things like that. And then, and then now we move into 2020 and all of the racial trauma that was flared up. And I mean, it's been there, but just flared up. Like, what did you have then a different perspective? Because you had stepped into the researcher position. Like, what did you notice? What did you see?
Yeah. So what I noticed was that during the times when there was like one event right after the next, there were definitely more posts during that time. So I think July of like 2016, there were like maybe 50 plus posts I was posting a day, interacting with other people throughout the community, colleagues, promoting events for racial trauma healing. It was just definitely more of an increase in that content. Whereas maybe when it died down a bit, it was like maybe 12 posts that month or, you know, but I started noticing like some trends.
Yeah. And being an advocate, but also being a Black woman, like, and a therapist, what has been the impact on you?
Yeah, that intersectionality, I feel like I felt it heavier during the pandemic. Because this is like the first time I'm navigating so much with my clients at the same time. And so I felt that heaviness. I felt at times that it was sometimes hard to step up to the plate and be a teacher or to educate others, or even to hold that space at times for clients. I had to do more self-care than usual. And find healing spaces for the healer. So that was the impact that it had during this time.
Gotcha. And what types of things, here you are like providing, like you said, space for others. What did you kind of naturally go to find space for yourself?
For me, I tapped into some yoga, which I wasn't always confident in because I was like, I have a hard time, like at times, like centering myself the way that I feel that you should be centered for that. But I was able to connect with some other therapists who were also, you know, beginners in that. And we did that together. Also just leaning on my community. I'm a part of a historically Black sorority. And so I was able to lean on my sisterhood and we were able to come together. And other therapists, I really just think that having those safe spaces, whether it's a Facebook group, and having others check in on us. I know you all did a check-in on the private practice startup and other groups for wellness professionals. Those things were very helpful. Just being uplifted by those communities. And of course, my job as well. They created a safe space.
Yeah, well, nice. Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing, you know, your story, your experience. That's so very appreciative. And before we dive into the topic, I just wanted to take a quick moment for our sponsor. As a therapist, you're probably too preoccupied with your caseload to want to think about bookkeeping or tax filing. Herd Bookkeeping and Tax is a platform built specifically for therapists that helps you track and improve your practice's financial health. Regardless of whether you're a seasoned clinician or you're in the first year of your practice, Herd will help you to identify areas for growth and streamline best financial practices for your business. When you sign up with Herd, you work directly with financial specialists to track your income and expenses, file taxes online, and grow your business. You'll also receive financial insights such as profit and loss statements and personalized monthly reports, so you can say goodbye to poring over spreadsheets and guessing your tax deductions or quarterly payments. Focus on your clients and Herd will take care of the rest. You can even ask Dr. Jennifer Kashani, a licensed clinical psychologist based in LA. She says Herd has simplified and streamlined bookkeeping and best business practices in a digestible and accessible way. Having the foundation of Herd for my business had made myself and in turn my patients feel more solid. Plans begin at just $60 a month and can easily be tailored to fit your business financial needs. You can schedule your first consultation at joinherd.com. That's joinherd, HEARD.com.
Is managing your practice stressing you out? Try Therapy Notes. It makes billing, notes, scheduling, and telehealth a whole lot easier. Check it out, and you will quickly see why it's rated the highest EHR on Trustpilot with over 1,000 verified customer reviews and an average customer rating of 4.9 or 5 stars. You'll notice the difference from the first day you sign up for the trial. They offer live phone support 7 days a week. So when you have questions, you can quickly reach someone who can help. You are never wasting time looking for answers. If you're coming from another EHR, they make the transition really easy. Therapy Notes will import your client's demographic data free of charge during your trial so you can get going right away. Use the promo code PPS to get your first 2 months for free, or try out Therapy Notes for free, no strings attached, including their very reliable telehealth platform. Make 2021 the best year yet with Therapy Notes.
Dani, where would you like to start on this topic? Where's the best place to start?
So I guess we can start with the first one on staying current and well informed, and then kind of just go down the list conversation.
Yeah. So tell us, where should we stay informed? How do we stay current? What's important for therapists to know?
Yeah, I'm really curious. I was just going to say, I'm really curious to hear what you say, Dani. And it's such an honor to have you on talking about this because of your experiences, because of your research, and just you and I go way back. And so it's just really cool to see how you have evolved and really found your passions. And I'm looking forward to hearing about how to really hone in on creating the space for the racial trauma and creating a safe space for those conversations, because I would imagine there's a lot of dynamics that come into play when exploring racial trauma and multi-generations of trauma and all of that. So talk to us about where we start with exploring this in therapy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so for me, one thing that I've also done for myself, especially if I'm not familiar with a culture who has been disenfranchised, I will sort of try to familiarize myself with some of the things that they face, because my racial trauma may be different from that of an Asian background or Latinx background. So I want to familiarize myself with that so that I don't automatically make assumptions. So one thing that I do is sometimes I attend town hall meetings in other areas just to kind of get an idea of because racial trauma can be different. It doesn't always have to be emotional. It could be economic. It could be them not having those resources that they need to get through the week, whether that's in school, at work. And that does impact their emotional capacity to function. And so I have gone to town hall meetings and just kind of networked with other people outside of my therapist community, educators, and other community officials. I've also diversified at times my timeline and my news feed with matters that impact a variety of people outside of my own community, and just try to stay up to date on what's happening around me in terms of if there are any recent news articles or if there are recent events that happened in the community that have, that people have spoken out on. I remember one time, especially during the uprising in Washington, D.C., a couple months ago, basically what happened was a woman was marching. They were marching to, I think what they're doing is they're trying to lobby right now in Connecticut to pass something to have racism identified as a kind of like as a public health crisis. And so what happened was someone who was not aligned with her viewpoint had spit on her. And I did not know that until I had familiarized myself with like some of the local news and stuff like that. And some of us were able to go out and help support her after that and get her justice and continue to stand behind her as, you know, she pushed forward her voice and stuff like that. So just being informed about what's going on around me. That's how I stay current and well informed.
I hear for you almost like, well, there's like two things going on for me. Like one, there's the question of like, you tell the story and it's like, I'm enraged. Like, how do you not get enraged and then step in and be an advocate? Like talk about that transition for you, like mentally, emotionally, like I just, you know, wow.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, so I think for me, it's multiple levels. So it's raised as a woman of color, like there's an intersectional piece to it. And just knowing how hard those before me have fought for us to come so far, it doesn't feel good to sit back and watch that happen, even if I don't know the person, you know? And so if there's ever a post online or Facebook and it's like, hey, we're meeting up here to discuss this or to speak with senators about this, I try my best to see what I can do, because I also think that, you know, therapists play a role in that too. And that I know a lot of people don't like to connect the two, politics and therapy, but I do think that sometimes just being in those spaces, you just never know who might need that support. So you can connect with some great people.
Gotcha. So I hear from you it's like that mission of just like showing up and being present, seeing what's there and seeing how you can serve.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Absolutely.
So staying current. So what would be next?
So for me, I know I've only been to one place or aligned with one agency that actually had an assessment tool that identifies racial trauma. And I think that sometimes when we don't have a name or we don't have something to identify with, sometimes we can't put the steps in place to develop solutions and work through things. So I think that having something in place, even if it's in your initial paperwork, I know that one place that I worked beside, they had a question in there is, you know, has your family ever experienced discrimination? And what was that like for you? And since then, how have you all kind of evolved from that? What supports were in place following that? And just being specific about helping clients give voice to that. Because oftentimes people who have been racially traumatized don't feel comfortable just coming up and speaking about it unless it's kind of like a foundation of safety laid for them. And usually when that happens and they feel free to, well, yeah, this is what happened to my family and my grandparents, and they'll give voice to that. And that's in and of itself is healing, having that permission to speak on it and knowing that that's okay.
What are some of the best ways to create that foundation of safety so that when therapists are in session and they're wanting to explore racial trauma with their clients, that the clients feel safe enough to do so?
Yeah, I think just kind of taking that, I know for me, what I've done is kind of taken that step down or even encourage the clinicians that I supervise to kind of take that step down and ask the family, you know, what is it about your culture or the experiences that you've endured that might be helpful for me to know, right? As I'm working with you and entering the space with you. Even, you know, sometimes family systems, you know, they may respond to certain crises different than others. And so before making a judgment call, just kind of, once again, being curious about that. Like, that's like my go-to. I love to be curious and not stay in a place of assumption. And so I'm always a learner of their experience. And I always remind them, listen, you're the expert of this. I don't know. And that's even intercultural. Like, even if I'm the same culture as that person, I may not know their experiences because we may have had two different locations, and so just kind of staying in that space.
Mm-hmm. As you talk, and I'm just kind of thinking, like, I'm not a trauma expert. I've done EMDR training, but I know we talk a lot about like fears, phobias, PTSD, but I don't know. I'm curious about this. If in our trauma trainings with therapists, like, are we also talking about racial discrimination and discrimination in other ways against genders and stuff like that? And is there anything out there that maybe is bringing more light that we need to be asking those things? Not only as, I don't want to say general practitioner, but maybe a practitioner who doesn't, specialize in trauma, but also in the trauma-based therapies and community. Like, anything out there that you're aware of, Dani?
So for me, I'm familiar with some things that like Ken Hardy has done. I'm familiar with some books that I can share with you all later in which they have explored this. But I do feel like we are just beginning to peel back the layers of that and include that. I haven't seen it in a lot of the trauma-based trainings that I've gone to specifically. But it is something that, especially now, since there has been an uprise, they're starting to put more out there.
Yeah. So it's, as we're talking about this, I'm just kind of like do like a call to action. Like, if you are a trauma-based therapist, or you're training or whatever, like, and you hear this, I'm just going to encourage you is, how will you then bring this into the trainings, and just throwing it out there. And if this calls you, let us know, because we're curious. It's just something that popped in my mind as we're like talking. I haven't really seen it, and we haven't really talked about it. So, yeah. Nice.
Yes, we could definitely use more.
Yeah. And definitely, we'll talk about like the resources and stuff like that, like towards the tail end, and we'll put all those on the show notes page. So, utilizing an assessment tool is really important. Remaining curious. What else is important?
I know what I wanted to share with you all is that one thing that I have my students do at least 4 times a semester is a cultural plunge. And so basically what I do is I challenge them to, by themselves, without the support of friends or family or anyone there as a comfort, to just kind of throw yourself out there. Like, go somewhere, sit through a service, go to an event, go to a space of people who are a different race, ethnicity, culture than you, and just take in the experience. What does it feel like? What's uncomfortable for you? How might this impact your therapy with this group of people? If you're going in there with your preconceived notions, what were some of those preconceived notions, and how are you leaving? And I mean, it's been kind of hard to do that now with the pandemic, but that's definitely something that I encourage, just stepping outside of that comfort zone. And I think that's the best way at times for us to understand humanity, right? To go beyond the scope of our level of understanding and what we've been used to.
That's funny. As in your bio, you talk about discovering new places. That's like one of the things that I love about traveling, is just really experiencing a different culture. And it's funny, like, obviously whoever I'm usually traveling with is American, or with me, or my family or friends. And like, sometimes I get annoyed at them, and I'm like, stop being like so culturally relative, like experience this culture, like stop trying to push our stuff on them, like, fall into their customs and their ways, and like experience that. But I love that you do that with your students. And I almost think, like, even during a pandemic, it could be like, well, listen to a poet you might not listen to, or read a book or a biography of someone that's completely a different experience, or watch a movie, or order food. Like, I think there's still so many ways to do that during the pandemic, for sure. Awesome. Well, let's just take another quick moment for our sponsor.
Okay, guys, it's sponsor time. You know what? Instead of reading a script about Gusto's payroll and benefits, we wanted to tell you what small business owners say, the people who use Gusto every day. Here's what one small business owner says. With Gusto, I think of payroll as a 30-second job. The website is so friendly and a joy to use. Friendly payroll? You don't hear that every day. And how about Amy from Utah? Amy says, I love Gusto so much. It's so painless. It's like going to the spa, and we have great options and rates, even though we're a super small team. Like going to the spa? Wow. And here's what Mneet says about Gusto's support team. Whenever something comes up, I reach out, and literally 24 hours later, they tell us what to do or assure us that we've already handled it. Smart technology and friendly humans, that's super cool. Honestly, the list goes on, and right now our listeners get 3 months free when they go to gusto.com/PPS. Yep, 3 months of payroll, benefits, administration, and more, totally free. Again, that's gusto.com/PPS.
So Dani, as we begin to wrap up this topic, are there things that we have left out that you want to make sure that you share?
Let's see here. I did want to share a book, The Racial Healing Handbook, by Annalise Singh. And it's comprised of like activities to help you challenge your privilege, confront systemic racism, and engage in collective healing. I definitely want to share that. And then if you all move into the giveaway, share the CT BIPOC Mental Health and Wellness Initiative that people can join us on Facebook Live for every week.
Awesome. We'll make sure to include all that stuff in our show notes. And before we do wrap up, I was just curious to kind of go back to the cultural plunge for a second. I would love for you to share some of the experiences your students had, some awakenings, thoughts, ideas. What have they discovered?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so interesting because I had one student who grew up in a Catholic church and they went to a Baptist church for the first time. And it was just so precious. They were like sharing like how they did not know that they were going to get so like just connected to the music, the service. It was a different pace for them. And they actually ended up going to more services after that and enjoyed it. It was nice. I've had some who have actually sat in on panel discussions that were for a certain community. And they talked about that awkwardness that they felt like, how is the audience viewing me right now? Like, what are they thinking of me? And just trying to figure out that. Some students have gone to events at like museums and stuff like that, to gallery talks about topics that they were not familiar with that pertain to a particular race. Maybe their family told them a different story of this race, and they were now taking in new information and kind of sitting with that and realizing, wow, like the things that I learned growing up are not aligned with what I'm hearing now or learning. And so I hear so many different things. And so it's interesting.
Yeah. And I can imagine that could be pretty profound, and that might be like the thing that really stands out, and, their time with you as their professor.
Yes. I want to challenge them. I definitely want to challenge them and make sure that, when they're meeting with families in the future, that they maintain that level of curiosity.
Yeah. It totally reminds me, I don't know if, Dani, you went to Nova, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It totally reminds me of, gosh, I don't know exactly the names because, it's like 15, 16 years ago now. But when we sat in either Douglas's or Shelley's class, and I remember having to do the, I wasn't going to say the sexual experiment, but something that pushed your own boundaries around like, sex, intimacy, all of that stuff. And I still remember today, like what certain people did, and the impact of that. And then we had to write a paper and what that was like, and doing something outside of your comfort zone. So I love that you're doing that. Yeah. Cause it's like, that is the thing that stands out in my mind when I think back to
I love that project. That really pushed me out of my, I think I had Dr. Green. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's just it's really cool. I'm just listening and taking it all in. It's so cool, Dani, to see you and just to see you again after so many years, and then to see you as a supervisor and creating these experiences for your supervisees and other therapists that really stretches them and expands them. And I love the idea of a cultural plunge. It's just such a beautiful concept and experience, and being able to openly and curiously step into other cultures and other people's realities, and just learn so much about yourself and about them, and being able to really understand cultures better that are maybe different than yours or even similar than yours, but look for the differences within those similarities. So yeah, it's been really great to have you on today. Is there anything in particular that you want to have Startup Nation take away from your message today?
The one thing for me is just making sure that we understand how others experience, their race and their culture, how that sort of motivates them, how at times it may create barriers for them. And I really just want us to have an understanding of one another's humanity and experiences. And I'm hoping that therapists will continue to familiarize themselves with information, to step outside their comfort zones, and to challenge themselves and to continually push themselves beyond those biases and maybe those assumptions that they've had. Because sometimes after years and years and years, we may lose sight of that, but it's so important that each client feels that we understand them, that we get them, and that we're holding a safe space for them to really emerge into their truest self. And so,
what a great way to end. I love that. It's just like perfect. It's beautiful. Well, Dani, thank you so much for being here with us today. I know that you had mentioned some resources. You also had shared a resource with us, the 44 mental health resources for racial trauma. That will also go on the show notes page, as well as contact information for Dr. Dani. If you wanted to reach out to her, and the other resources that she did mention. Startup Nation, we hope that you guys join us next week as we talk about a topic that I definitely love to talk about. Y'all know I love talking about money, and we're inviting Nicole Icavoni, and we are talking about how to take control of your finances and boost your business. So definitely join us for that. I know she's going to have a really interesting story for you about how she utilized her couples work to look at her relationship with money. And she talks a lot about dating your money. So you'll want to definitely check that episode out for sure. Kate?
Awesome. Yeah, well, let's take a moment to do our Startup Nation superhero shout out for today's episode. And this comes from Lori McGuffin. Lori says, the private practice startup has been extremely helpful to me as I start my own practice. The podcasts have great information, and there's a podcast for every question I have. I purchased the base package of paperwork for my practice, and I absolutely love it. It's very professional looking and saves me so much time. I feel like Kate and Katie are my friends next door, taking me under their wing and guiding me. The private practice startup has given me the confidence to know that I can have my own practice and a solid foundation with knowledge and professionalism. Lori, that's so awesome. Congratulations on taking the leap into your own practice and for protecting yourself with the attorney-approved private practice paperwork. We're so glad that the podcasts have been helpful for you. Startup Nation, we really hope that the content that we're creating for you all with our podcast and the other free content that we have created as well is really useful for you, because that's what our goal is. And we always love to hear from you, to hear what episodes resonate with you, what you want to see more of, and if there's a particular topic that you haven't heard yet. So we encourage you to send us an email, and definitely make sure to subscribe, rate, and review our show. And we appreciate all of you all, and we're cheering you along every step in the way along your practice journey. Dani, thank you so much for being here. It was just so special and such an honor to have you on today and helping us to continue to address the really important issues with systemic racism and healing racial trauma. So we will see you guys on the next episode. In the meantime, stay inspired.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks for joining us on The Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.